Today is Monday, October 21st, and this is Spring Office Hours, Season 3, Episode 35, Mastering Spring, Continuous Learning with Amigoscode. My name is Dan Vega, Spring Developer Advocate at Broadcom, joined by my good friend and colleague, DaShaun Carter. DaShaun, how you doing today?
I'm wonderful. It is a great day to be a Spring developer. I've been looking forward to this episode. We've been talking about it for a long time, and this is going to be fun. We've had great stuff happening. We're looking forward to new releases, and it's just a good day. It's a good day. The weather's not so bad either.
It's not so bad. Yeah, it could be worse, and it will be worse sooner or later. But last little bit of kind of summer is kind of at least a little bit of good weather left, I think.
I've got two football teams.
Nice.
I live here in Kansas City.
Yeah.
I went to school at Iowa State, and both of them happen to be undefeated right now. I'm not able to watch all the games, but it's a nice. It feels pretty good.
So don't you have three? You run a football team.
Oh yes. I also got my son. Yes, you're right. Oh, sorry about that. Yes, I also have the team that I coach, and we're having a good time.
Yep. Well, if you are a subscriber to my newsletter, you would know that I did some office upgrades over the weekend. Do you see the nice blue wall back there?
Amazing.
I had a cream colored wall back there, and I'm like, I gotta upgrade this space a little bit. So slowly but surely. Yeah. So it's been fun. So we're gonna have an interesting conversation today. We'll get to that in a second. I just want to let everybody know we usually live stream every Monday from 1 to 2-ish, depending on, but when we have special guests like we do today, we make sure we can accommodate them. So we're a little bit earlier today. But if you can't be here live and in person with us on the live stream, you can always catch the replay on the Spring Developer YouTube channel. We also go ahead and take this and turn this into a podcast. So you can go ahead and catch this wherever you get your podcasts. But DaShaun, if people are here in the live stream, what should they be doing?
Well, here's the thing. When you come to my house for dinner, if you leave hungry, that's your fault. Just like the live stream. If you've got questions and you don't ask, that's your fault. We have amazing guests. We have answers, and we have a great community too. That's the other thing is our community is awesome, and they're here to answer your questions as well. So even if we don't get to it on the show, get them ask your questions. Don't leave hungry.
All right, with that, I'm gonna go ahead and bring on our special guest today. I'd like to welcome Nelson Djalo to the stage, aka Amigoscode. How are you doing, my friend?
Not too bad. Yourself?
I'm great. It's a great, as DaShaun said, it's a great day to be a Spring developer. So we're happy to have you here.
Nice. DaShaun, when you're talking about football, is it American football or?
American
Yes.
football. I should clarify American football
Okay,
with
okay.
the pads and the
I was a
tackling.
bit confused in there.
Yes, American football.
Yeah, you forget, DaShaun.
Yes.
Our community is everywhere.
Worldwide.
Yeah.
And my mom and dad like to watch. So wherever you're joining us from, drop a note, say hi, and let us know where you're joining from. Because that's always fun.
All right, Nelson. Before we get started, I've kind of known you for a little while. I've also seen you from afar. Kind of your journey. We'll kind of get into that. But for those who don't know you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of what you're up to these days?
Yeah. So, as many of you know, my name is Nelson. I run Amigoscode. It's a platform basically that teaches anyone software development. We mainly focus on Java, Spring Boot, as well as DevOps. I've been running the YouTube channel for, as a business now for I think about 5 years now,
Wow.
and it's been my main gig since I left my previous job. Yeah, it's me.
So before we kind of get into some of the Amigos Code stuff, I want to kind of take you back before you were doing the YouTube channel and teaching online. What were you doing in your kind of day-to-day jobs? What kind of how'd you get into programming, and
What was your journey?
what were you doing?
Yeah. So my journey is a funny one. So before I used to play football. So that was my main.
That football.
Not American football.
Not soccer.
American.
Not soccer.
Okay.
Football. AKA soccer. I used to play football back in the days. That was my dream basically. And then when I was around 17, I had a knee injury. It's like a condition called discoid meniscus.
That sounds awful.
Yeah. It's basically, so sometimes, even now I have it, my knee, sometimes if I bend, it kind of it gets stuck. And then it's like the nerve, sometimes they have to relax so I can, fully stretch my knees. Yeah. So I got diagnosed with that. And then basically the career was over. And I remember my dad used to say always, Nelson, focus on your studies. It's not just so much about football. I'm like, don't worry. I'm gonna make it.
Yeah.
And it didn't happen basically.
Yeah.
So fast forward, then I'm like, okay, I need to do something with my life, right? So I didn't focus on my studies, didn't listen to my dad, and I was like, okay, so I need to study because obviously I need to make money. I was young at that time, and then I almost ended up doing travel and tourism as a course, but because I did IT technician. So before I used to fix computers, motherboards and all that stuff. So then computers was something very, very close to, computer science, like that I wanted to follow. So then I did my college. So here in the UK, we call it college. I think for you is it high school?
We call college. We have high school.
College, I think it's university, isn't it?
University, college, yes.
Yep.
University, yeah. So first is college. So before you go to university, you go to college. Because I was an adult at that stage. I did 2 years of I think it was web design or in internet systems, something like that.
Yeah.
And then my first year was like really difficult. First time I stumbled upon Java, I'm like what is this? Like, what is this?
I remember that feeling as well.
Yeah, it was difficult, very, very difficult. But luckily, I had a good teacher. Then I started buying books, and I was like, even though it's difficult, I'm gonna have to learn it. There's no other way for me. I'm gonna have to, make it basically. So then managed to get good grades, and then applied to a university in London called King's College, where I did computer science majors for 2 or 3 years. Yeah, 3 years. Even in my first year, I was like, computer logic. Seeing the teacher like teaching natural deduction, and I'm like, what is this? Like, it was difficult.
Yeah.
But with me, it was more, yes, it is difficult, but I just have to keep on pushing.
Yeah, this is what you want to do.
Yeah, exactly. And eventually it will just I was in the hope of eventually it's just gonna happen, right? And I remember that day where things actually clicked. The light bulb moment goes like, oh, right, this is okay. So this is it, right? And then I start doing more and more and more. And I remember in my first year, like programming wasn't my thing, to be honest. Like I would avoid Java altogether. Like all these, coding assignments. It was just so difficult. If you don't have any math background, any computing background, and especially if school wasn't your thing, then going into it, it was like really, really difficult.
Yep.
And then second year, I basically it was mainly a fail basically in that first year. I counted it as a fail. And then second year, that's when things started to click a little bit more. Started doing interviews with Google and Facebook, and I failed all of them, to be honest. Literally failed everything.
Yeah.
And then I remember, I think it was the last month of ending the second year of university. I applied to Citibank. I was like, I've applied to this company. It's been a while, but I haven't received any call. And then lastminute.com, I got a phone call. Oh, hi, we've seen your CV. We'd like you to invite you for an interview. And I'm like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
And then I hang up the call and I'm like, I'm not gonna go. I'm not gonna go.
What was that about?
Because I didn't believe in myself. I didn't feel like I could get the job because things were difficult for me. Like I've applied left, right, center, like Facebook, Google, and I've been rejected. So I'm like, I'm not gonna go because I know it's gonna be a reject. And then last minute, I'm like, okay, so I'm just gonna go. I had to go and buy a nice shirt, a nice suit.
Yeah.
Went to the interview.
Look good, feel good.
Yeah, it was actually an American that actually interviewed me. Quite senior. I didn't manage to complete the assignment, but the feedback was that because I tried really hard, and they could see that I was hungry for it. That's why they then ended up, calling me and say, "Hey, by the way, we'll offer you an internship."
Yay!
Yep.
Wow.
So let's pause right here. Let's say, hey,
Yeah.
a lot of us have struggled. I look at stuff all the time, and I'm like, what is this? I still have that feeling.
Yeah.
And the self-doubt, right? A lot of us have been there.
Still there.
Yep. But just going for it. Like you got to take that first step, going, and good things can happen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's where we're at right now. So
Yeah.
we got to break.
There's that kind of saying the like the scariest things in life have like the biggest gains, and that has been absolutely true for me. I've been in that same position. Like I don't know if I could do this. I don't know if like there's 1,000 people applying for this job. They're probably better than I am. Like
absolutely,
you gotta get rid of that, and you just believe in yourself and take a leap. And you never know what's gonna happen. If it doesn't happen, you move on to the next one.
Absolutely. So then I managed to get the internship, and that was quite nice because I've done well in that internship. I did mainly, I think it was at the time it was .NET and C#,
Mm-hmm.
and then I switched teams, and then I did a bit of I think it was Python and JavaScript, and I ended up building a tool that the traders actually used.
Oh, nice.
And then I've done really well in the final presentation, and then they offered me a job for the following year, meaning that I didn't have to apply for any jobs in my third year. So I just had to focus on my studies because I was like lacking so behind. I was like, yeah, I just need to focus now, and that was a lifesaver, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then they offered me a position. I worked really hard, managed to get first class at university, and then join City as a grad, and then it's just been learning
continuously, maybe continuous learning.
Exactly.
Fantastic.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's basically how I fell into it.
That's great. And so what was your primary role there at City once you kind of got out of university?
So my first role was working. I forgot the team, but I was working with a team in India, and we were responsible of building. I think it was an application that looked at some grid data, processing large amounts of data.
Nice.
Yeah, I didn't have good experience because, as a fresher, you'd expect to have, someone that would mentor you, the code base.
Yeah.
You'd learn from it, right?
Yeah.
But for me, it was, and then the communication barrier between the team in London and I think it was in India or China. I can't remember exactly.
Yeah.
It was a barrier for me because obviously I'm a complete beginner, and I needed like support. I needed support. So so that first year wasn't really great, and then I switched teams where it was really good. So I had a team in Poland, and then we were using Java, Spring Boot, so all of the cool stuff basically.
Yes, that sounds exciting.
Yeah. Spring Boot. So yeah, and then I think I did manage to push maybe like 3 features to production. During my time, it was only like 9 months, that much. But that was it. So my experience with Spring and Spring Boot wasn't the best. And in fact, when I then say, okay, I think investment bank is not for me, basically, wearing a tie and a suit to work.
Yeah.
Like I need something more challenging, more techy. So then I applied to a startup in London. And again, going through the interview process, and it's nerve-wracking, and you have to prepare and all that. Somehow I managed to get the job.
Yay.
Yeah, and then basically, it's just been Java throughout. So no Spring Boot. So for about, I think, 5 years, no Spring Boot. So it was everything custom made. And then I did, I think, 4 years of backend engineering, and then did 2 years of DevOps, where it was more about Terraform, CloudFormation,
nice,
AWS, and all that good stuff. Docker, Kubernetes.
I like hearing about people's journeys, because it just seems like you never find like two people who have the same journey. Everybody's journey is like been different.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting to hear. I love when I hear like people were part of big organizations and startups and other companies, because you get to see kind of the lay of the landscape. You get to see different technologies, different large organizations work much differently than startups do, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think you gain a lot of experience from that. So.
Yeah, and actually you said it right. So for me, where actually what started to learn a lot was when I was they're not a startup anymore, but early stages.
Yeah,
thanks to you.
You get to see things from the ground, like how things
done.
Yeah, like you push into production about 6 to 7 times a day. Like literally a day,
and that feels good, doesn't it?
Yeah, it feels. My first feature to production was, I think it was Firebase, like implementing something to do with Firebase, just to add like a bit of metadata or something like that, or maybe to get the device type or something like that. And that feeling, it was like, wow, it's just good. It's just good.
Yeah, and you get to use all the cool tools and frameworks and languages that you want, and a large, because again, everybody's gunning for like, hey, I want to work for some FANG company and Netflix and Meta and whatever it is, right? That there are some pros to that, obviously. There are also some cons to that. Here's what you're going to use. You're probably going to wait a couple months to push something. There are pros and cons to each. So I always advise people, hey, kind of take what's available, take what you're interested in. Don't always go chasing like the big FANG companies right away, because that experience of working for a smaller company goes a long way.
Yeah. Absolutely. And just the feeling of ownership. I would own a part of this system. This is like my baby. So I'm responsible of designing the database. I'm responsible of implementing. I'm responsible of testing. shipping it to production, maintaining it, creating all of the, dashboards with Grafana, Kibana. Basically, see like the whole picture, like the CI pipeline.
Yeah.
You just learn a lot from it, which I definitely recommend. People don't just be limited on these big organizations. It's a lot of fun when you work for a startup.
Trade-offs, like you said early, like when you didn't have somebody guiding you, hey, here's how we get to production. You didn't have that hands-on. In my experience, what I've seen is in those roles, you actually are going to learn more. You're going to wear more hats. You're not just the developer. And it kind of forces you to learn and figure out how to learn, how to build relationships.
Absolutely. And one which I want to, it just came to my mind is being on call. So with these big organizations, like you don't get to experience that much. But when I experienced,
somebody does.
When I was on call, trust me, I would wake up around 3:00. Oh my God. Pager duty. Something is there, just that feeling. It's just like, it's just it's an amazing experience, to be honest, which I definitely recommend people.
And I think being on call is not everybody's jam either, right?
It's not mine. It's not mine.
Everybody has a role. Everybody has a spot, and everybody's experience in large company might not be the same. It depends on where you're at. It depends on the responsibility that you have. But I'll say one thing about being on call. There was definitely a pride that I had when being on call, when I knew the answer. I knew how to fix the problem. That was good. So kind of lean into it. Like being proud of the work that you do, being proud of the responsibility that you have for the customers, your internal or external customers, what they're getting. That's big. But you weren't using Spring.
No Spring.
Oh, so that was like not even as good as it could have been. Right? So as great as that was, there was more.
So let's talk about Spring. Since this is Spring Office Hours. How long have you been involved with Spring, like using Spring? And
how did you get started?
How did you get started with it? What kind of got you interested in it?
So I initially started teaching programming. My first course was JavaScript, and then I've been using Java, no Spring at all. And I discover Spring. I go on YouTube, I see Josh Long, I see you, Dan, creating good videos. And I'm like, there's a market here, but I've never used Spring. So then I go on the website, look at documentation, and I'm like, holy crap. Is this it? Like, it's so easy. Like, just put an annotation here, and then you run the application, off you go. Connecting to the database, just some lines of configuration. I'm like, what?
Think of all of that. All the stuff that you had to figure out before is now
plumbing.
Easy, auto-configured.
It's just it's just easy. It's just easy. I'm like, well, like I know Java. I've never used Spring. I know all the concepts. And let me just try and teach Spring. And initially it was
great way to learn it.
Right? Initially it was mainly learning from documentation, watching Josh Long, Dan, and then coming out with my own ideas, and then how can I, simplify things even further, right?
Yeah.
And that's really how things started, to be honest.
It's great to hear you say that, because I often tell people, like, you don't need to be an expert to teach something. You need to have a willingness to learn, but you always just got to be one step ahead of who you're trying to teach to.
Exactly.
So as a beginner, if you're just that one step ahead of the beginner that's coming along right behind you, you're honestly probably a better person to teach that than someone who's been doing it for 10, 20 years, because they have all that experience with it. So if anybody's out there is like worried about giving a talk or a presentation or writing something or creating a course on something, just know that I think we've all been there. Like you,
absolutely.
Yeah. So some good advice there. Good to hear that.
And usually people ask me, oh, how do you know Spring, and how I want to record a video about it, but the answer is documentation.
Yeah.
Good job. Love to hear it. And the thing is,
just documentation.
Spring is an open source project.
Yeah.
This is community. So when you say that, like, we love to hear that, and that's encouraging for those of us that are working on documentation.
Absolutely.
So fantastic.
Absolutely.
The
So
documentation.
for me, it was more because I already know the concepts inside. Now, reading the documentation is just so obvious to me,
Yeah.
right? It's just a puzzle, and you're just putting everything together. You just, you know, putting whatever you want to build together, and Spring is just amazing at that.
So I have a question about Spring because we get this question a lot, and I have an answer, but I'm curious to hear your answer. People come to us a lot and say, like, how do I learn Spring? So that seems like a really overloaded question, but if somebody were to ask you, how do I learn Spring? What's your answer to that?
I would say, if you don't know nothing about Spring, starting off with it depends on the level as well, isn't it? So some people like more on the blog or on the blogging tutorials. Some people are more like videos. So depending on who you are, then I would say if it's video, I think just go on YouTube.
I love the way you started that answer, though. You said it depends.
Yeah.
Right. One of the things that I think our community has to understand is there's different ways to approach it.
Absolutely.
Right. And different people learn in different ways. And that's one of the reasons why I love seeing multiple people talking about the same thing. Because I've got my little communities, and some people might say, oh, go watch Amigoscode. Right? That's where they go because that's what worked for them. And yet somebody else is going to say, oh, yeah, go watch Dan Vega's code. Go watch, because it depends. Everybody has like a different flavor, a different style. One of the things we say is like the water or the cereal in the cereal aisle. Like there's tons of different flavors, but there's something for everybody.
Exactly. Yeah. So I would say go on YouTube, Dan, Josh Long. I think I would say you like both of you are like, I think that I would say the top creators, like the experts, in the Spring world. But obviously then you've got, myself, you've got some Indian channels which are really good, to be honest. So there's a lot of and there's others. I've been seeing new people creating content around Spring.
Siva's in the house today. Siva has a great channel at Siva Lab. So
always delivering great stuff.
Yeah,
there are a lot of great channels out there.
Yeah, you've got many good channels, and then obviously then documentation for those that like documentation. So myself,
really great place.
Right now, I'm more of a documentation person.
Yep.
Not so much about videos. And then obviously ChatGPT, which if you're not using ChatGPT or any AI tool, it's more about speeding up the actual workflow. If you see what I mean.
Yep.
I like that you brought that up.
Yeah. Go ahead.
We have, was it Sergi that talked about like, hey, the decline of Stack Overflow as these GPTs are being adopted more. One of the things that I like about Stack Overflow questions is being able to answer those questions fully. Not just this is what worked for me, but the answers that say, this part does this part does this, this part does this, you can change this here, you can twist this knob. Having those well-explained answers, that's massive. And those are the ones like, okay, those are the ones that really help me out. But that's kind of what I'm getting from a lot of these GPT LLMs, is I'm getting the full explanation when I ask for it.
Yeah. And I think just faster responses. Like I don't have to go search 10 different places to get the right response.
Absolutely.
Most of the time I can just ask a question and get the right response.
Absolutely. And also it's more about sometimes if you've got an idea and you've never worked with this, I think I've seen some of, I think it was your LinkedIn post about is it Tika, like the PDF.
The Tika documents, yes. The Spring AI has added some document readers to the Spring Initializer. Yeah.
So if you've never done anything around, that field, then just typing on OpenAI, how do I just get a snippet of code, and that could be the starting point for whatever you're trying to implement. But I would say if you're a complete beginner, obviously that doesn't work for you because you want
Right.
to
You don't
learn.
know the questions to ask, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You want to learn, and that's the danger of AI and all of these chatbots.
Yep.
It's not so much good for beginners, but it's more for people that already kind of know it.
Right.
Because
Because it is such an iterative process too, and like
yeah,
you need to know which questions to ask back. And if you don't know those questions,
yeah,
you could
exactly.
probably get hallucinations and bad code and bad suggestions. So.
Absolutely. And I was recording a course for IntelliJ a few months ago, and I think they have a feature on like similar to ChatGPT. You ask a
Yep.
question, it gives you some code.
Yep.
I look at the code, but I know this. I know that there's something wrong in here,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I'm like, okay, but can you improve? And
Yeah.
then it goes, oh right, so these are the list
Oh
of the
yeah.
problems. It lists all the
Yeah.
problems, and then he improves the solution, and it gives me
Yeah.
back.
Yep.
Yep.
This
So
is a big step.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
But in addition to that, I'm a believer, and this maybe comes from coaching.
Mhm.
The thing that I tell my kids is there's no shortcuts. You want to get better at anything, you got to do more of it. And one of the things that I'm seeing, if you are comfortable asking questions to ChatGPT to get your understanding, if you're doing that enough, it's just like doing the simple addition, where it's like, oh, 1 + 1, 2 + 3, 5 + 6, and you just did that repetition, so it becomes automatic.
Yep.
You can get that same level. You can get those same kind of repetitions with ChatGPT, and I've seen it. I've seen people now moving up really fast
Yeah.
when they have a good understanding. They have a favorite LLM and the way that they know how to pull answers out of it. I've
Yeah.
seen people level it really fast.
Yeah, something else you could do instead of asking it a specific question. So if I want to learn Spring Boot, but I want to learn it for a specific thing, like I want to build web apps, I want to build a REST API, you can ask it to give you like a curriculum or a learning path to that thing.
Yes,
so now
yes.
I can go, okay, there's step number 1. Let me go do some research on that on my own, right? So yeah, there's a bunch of things you could do with it. But yeah,
Fantastic.
so Spring. So you've been using it a while. You've been teaching it a while. Anything lately that's really caught your eye that like, hey, this is new in Spring that you're like, oh man, that looks really cool, or I got to use that more.
To be honest, I think the latest thing that I've learned about Spring is I think it's through your videos. I've been watching you actually. Spring AI.
Nice.
I think you had the open AI stuff recently. The reason being, so I'm not so much now into Spring, and that's because
You're polyglot.
yeah. So
It's okay.
usually, actually, a funny one. Yesterday, I received an email. There's a guy. He's asking me, "You are the Spring expert, but your website is not written in Java."
That I get that a lot as well. So
And I'm like, I didn't reply. I think I'm gonna record a video on it. Right?
yeah.
But lately, I've been mainly focusing on building Amigoscode 2.0.
Yep.
And that involves a lot of TypeScript.
Ooh, I want to show that off while you're talking, by the way.
As well as a lot of automation that I have to do with my videos.
Yes.
And all of that is done with Golang. So it's been Golang, it's been mainly TypeScript, Superbase for the back end. So yeah, so I just don't stick to one language or one framework.
Yep. Right tool for the right job.
Yeah, exactly. The right tool for the right job.
And
so yeah,
I do the same thing. My personal website is written in like Vue and Nux because I use like document-based Markdown to like write my blog posts in. Like again, that was the workflow that I wanted to do. I want to write Markdown, publish to Git, and then have something built on the front end. Like it's not obviously I'm a huge fan of Spring, but in that case, like I didn't need that for that job, right?
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
yeah, and I think being able to branch again, being a polyglot developer, being able to use different languages, use different frameworks, helps you in your primary language because you get to kind of draw from ideas from other languages and go, oh, that's how they solve that problem. I bet you there's a way to do that in Java.
And also, if you build software, if you build, let's say, Java Spring Boot, it's not going to be just Java. It's going to
Right.
be, you know, some shell scripting. It's going to be some Python under the hood. It's going to be some
Yeah.
Golang for automation, Python for maybe your um, CI or all of your infrastructure as code, for example.
Yep.
So it's
I'm
not
shaking
just
my
one.
head. I'm moving.
Yeah,
I take, and I'll go find the thing that works for me in the Golang or in Python or whatever. I'll go
yeah,
find it, and hey, it works. And then I say, man, I would like to expose this to the Spring community, and I go and I
Right.
try to rewrite that thing using Spring
Yeah.
Shell, because
Spring Shell.
I've
Yeah,
done a lot of things in Bash, but now
yeah.
I've got Spring Shell that I can
Spring
do.
Shell.
So yeah, I understand where you're going. I've been there, but now I'm trying to bring it back because we have so many more tools,
Tools. Yeah,
and our ecosystem continues to improve, and not just like adding tools, but the performance of
hmm
Java
hmm
continues to get better. So all of these things, the whole
yeah.
ecosystem continues to get better. So I get
And
it. I love it.
and one thing that I want to say to the viewers is not so much about the language.
Great point.
It's not so much about people stress too much. Oh, how do I write a login registration, if statement, while loops, and like when we build software, it's not so much about the implementation. That's the easiest bit. You know, it's more about thinking, the application as a whole.
Could I say
As
the
a whole.
understanding? Understanding is more important than the implementation.
So people think that the implementation is the hardest bit, so they focus too much on that, but then
Mm,
they forget about everything else.
yeah.
If you see what I mean.
You're building software for people to use. And if you don't understand what they want to do with it, then whatever code you write isn't going to matter, right? So, like you
Yeah,
said, a lot of it is, I stress this a lot. A lot of software development is soft skills and teamwork and
yeah,
understanding problems and problem solving, right? Like putting together a plan, and then the code just kind of writes itself if you know what you're doing, right?
exactly. So as an example, if you're building a social media platform, you're not going to start, writing all the classes and the while loops. No, right? You need to think about, how can I design the database so that as things grow and things scale, I'm not going to suffer from anomalies, for example, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's your starting point, and people usually they forget completely. Oh, I need to get this class user, the password class, and start putting things together. No,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
If you have a good if you have a good design, let's say your database is well implemented, then whatever code that you write, it just follows, naturally.
Yeah, and I want to go back to something you said at the beginning of this, which was like when you were sitting in class, like learning about Java the first time, you're just like, "What is this? Are you speaking the same language as me? I don't understand anything you're talking about." I had the same exact feeling. It's funny to fast forward 25 years now with all this experience and remember that feeling. I wish I could go back and tell younger self, like,
Pay attention.
pay
Yeah,
It'll be
attention, have
okay.
a little
Yeah.
patience.
yeah,
It's going to make sense one day, but it takes
mm.
time, and it takes, a willing to learn. But once you get it,
Once you get
it
it,
will
yeah,
make sense. Yeah. And it's like, how am I ever going to learn this, let alone multiple languages and frameworks and technologies? Like, just trust the process, have a willingness to learn, and it's all going to work out. I promise.
yeah.
Do you enjoy coding?
Um, I do, I do. But I wouldn't say like as much as before. Sometimes it depends also on the problem, right?
Uh
It
huh.
depends on the actual problem. But obviously, as you grow and you've done quite a lot of it, sometimes you naturally want to progress into different
Mm,
areas
yep.
where it's going to be more on software architecture, for example,
Yep.
or leading a team, for example. But yeah, so obviously, if I can get my hands dirty, obviously I will do it. But it's not that I want to be from 9 to 5 just coding,
Yep.
coding, 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 coding.
I get it.
And I think with some of us, that's how the path draws naturally for some of
Yep.
us.
Yeah, that makes sense. One of my joys, I know that Dan does.
Yeah.
One of my joys is I love jumping in to a problem, like getting that email that, hey, how do I do this? And seeing the smiles on the other side. I love the feedback that,
Yeah.
hey, I know how to answer this. Did that help you? And when I get to help somebody, that's what I live for. That's what I'm chasing, is being able to help somebody smile in what they're doing, wherever that is, whatever vertical, whatever part of the stack.
Yep.
I love that.
I can align with everything you're saying, Nelson, because I think we're similar people in that aspect. Like you said, you can only solve the same problem so many times, and if you start coding, you're gonna do a lot of the same things over and over again. But you have to, if this is the industry you want to be in, that's the road that you have to take, right? You got to get your feet, you got to get your hands dirty.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's good to know that, like, I think and this isn't an age thing, for younger people who are new to programming, you could be 20, 40, 60, whatever. If you're new to programming, though, just know that, like, there are other paths out there. Like Nelson said, if you want to get into like higher level stuff and solving problems a little bit bigger than just kind of daily code stuff, you can get into architecture. If you enjoy teaching, you can get into something like DevRel or just teaching itself, right? There are different paths in this industry, but you gotta get your hands dirty first and learn the ropes.
Exactly.
Here's a question from the audience. I think maybe we're both going to pull it up. It says, Nelson, with your robust knowledge of the Spring ecosystem, currently active projects, which of the projects do you consider more challenging for beginners to quickly master? Which projects do you think are hard to kind of get your mind wrapped around?
Projects as in
Spring.
Like Spring Data? Is that what
Maybe
he's saying?
That's what I'm seeing.
Yeah, I'll probably say Spring Security, maybe.
Oh yeah.
Which
Good
one?
Answer. Spring Security.
Yeah.
That's obvious.
Yeah.
That's my answer too.
Yeah.
You find your path through the thing that works, and then you kind of stick with it. But to understand it at a whole, like our friends do,
it's a big topic that most of us don't understand, to be honest. Right.
But that's good feedback.
Why you should never roll your own security framework.
It gets easier. Oh, you should don't do that. And that we say that half-heartedly, but really, like, that's a serious thing. We don't want anybody here, any of our friends, any of our audience, to be on the front page for the wrong reason. Right. There's a lot of good value in adopting Spring Security, and it's gotten easier. Like the number of things that we need to know to configure out of the box has gotten simpler. Our new defaults, they've made the work much easier. Those things that you might not need to dig on, they have secure by default defaults. So that's great.
Unless you want to be a security expert, then obviously you have to remove everything and then look under the bonnet. But that's again a field on its own. Like, see, you've got teams that their main job is just security, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I have a question. I'm gonna be a little selfish here as a content creator. I'd kind of like to get a peek under the hood and get your thoughts on, like, how do you develop something new, whether it's a blog post, whether it's just a video for YouTube, whether it's a course. What's your kind of creative process of teaching something?
So most of it comes from the community and the emails that I get.
Nice.
And then usually what I do is I try and think of an idea, and then how can I take Spring, because obviously my audience, they're mainly Spring developers, right? How can I take all of these Spring projects and then build this idea? And then think of an idea where maybe I want to teach, designing the database, implementing the database, connecting to Docker is very popular, and then just try and use all of those pieces together to create this learning video or content. And usually people want to. Sometimes we think of these crazy ideas, and people just want the basic stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've looked at your video on Spring. I think it was getting started on Spring Boot or Spring Boot tutorial that you've done last year,
Yep.
and that one has 500,000 of views.
Yeah.
Whereas if you were to build something like really complex, really like you probably get like I don't know, probably like 20K or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things I do really appreciate about your content and your courses are just something you just said. You do kind of incorporate a lot of things like, hey, we're going to build something tangible, something real world. And in the real world, you're probably going to pull in Docker. You may need to talk to a real world database. You may use some event streaming. So I appreciate that as somebody who's learned from you. So
and the reason why I tend not to overcomplicate my courses, my videos, is because I've been there.
Mm-hmm. We were just talking about that, right? Being sitting there in a class going, what are you talking about?
Yeah, what is this? So whatever I teach, I try to simplify as much as possible. So that it actually
Absolutely.
so that the barrier to the entry, so the entry level for you is easy.
Yes. That's amazing you said it. Because again, based on our conversation we're having today, like I feel the same way. Like I felt like I never learned as fast as everyone else. Like I felt like a lot of these, like, learning Java was like thrown at me, and I was just like, oh, how am I ever going to learn this? And so when I teach, I put myself in your shoes, and like, I don't want you to have that feeling. So let's try and like take you step by step to this.
Absolutely.
So I get a lot of like comments going, this is all like great content, but it's all for beginners and nothing for us like advanced folks. And I'm like, yeah, sure. But 90% of people coming to learn something is from a beginner track.
Exactly.
Usually somebody who's advanced in this, who's done this 10, 20 years, like you go straight to the documentation, you find what you need to, you iterate on that, and you're good to go. Right. But yeah, that's great to hear. So.
I think this is a question for Nelson. As a Java Spring developer, which front-end framework would you recommend using?
Ooh.
I have to say React. And that's because that's the one I've used before. That's the one the new platform is using. But again, it's not that React is the best. Oh, actually, I used Angular before. I think it was called AngularJS before, and then they did the revamp.
Yep.
And it was Angular, and then you had to learn everything again. That's when I said, I'm not learning none of this. I'm switching to React. That's it. So since then, it's just been React. But there's no right or wrong framework, or just learn and use whatever.
I'm a big fan of Vaadin.
Yeah, exactly.
Huge fan of Vaadin, because the front end stuff, the getting the pixels and the buttons to work right, that could take me weeks.
Yeah.
Vaadin, hey, just let me drop one in here, and I'm using Java to do it. I love that.
See, that's a different view of seeing things. Yep. So you're not into all the CSS and pixels, which myself also let me put it this way. So I like React more on the logic and like the back end side of things. But when it comes to UI and everything, so my team in Morocco, Omar, Amin, they handle everything there. So yeah, making things beautiful. That's not me, basically. Everything you see on the website, that's their job.
Yeah, and I would say if you're asking that question, I would work backwards. I always would say work backwards from that. Like, what is your end goal? Like, do you want to get a job being like somebody who is well versed on the front end and the back end? Then yeah, React is probably one of the most popular front end frameworks out there. That is probably the way to go. But if you just want to learn a front end because you want to build something on the side and like do something with it, then you really have to try these different frameworks out and see what resonates with you. Because as Nelson said, most of them can all do the same thing, but maybe you don't want to write front end in JavaScript. Maybe you want to use something like Java. Or maybe you don't want to learn something like TypeScript, which you will have to do with something like Angular, right? So really, what's your end goal? Kind of work backwards from there.
Yeah. And Go ahead, Nelson.
Yeah, I was going to say, also, I think, so it depending on your situation, right? So if you're looking for a job and you know there's company X, Y, and Z,
Yeah.
look at that tech stack.
Yep.
And then try and build something that they use or something that they are in need, and in that way you have higher chances of securing that job, if you see what I mean.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the things that you guys have both had feedback on is like, hey, can we get past the beginner level stuff? And Mohammed, our friend, says, I would love to see Spring Boot course explaining software architecture, design, something like real domain-driven design, event sourcing, etc. And I lean in and I'm like, oh, that sounds like you'd like to learn more about Spring Modulith, because some of those principles are kind of baked in. So that's just a tip. Like the audience is speaking, they say, hey, we would like to learn more.
Absolutely. And I think for Spring Modulus, I was with Josh in London few months ago, and he's like, you don't need to use the public. You don't need to.
Yeah.
You don't need, like the whole model. You put the class here, it just encapsulate everything. And I'm like,
yep.
What? And it's like,
and have you adopted that?
I said we definitely have to record a video on that. Yep. I haven't. But yeah, so if you want advanced stuff, I think you guys, cover everything basically.
Those little tips that I'm sure I know exactly what Josh is telling you are things that allow us to do this better architected software, because, and I'm pulling from Nate Shuda here, like when we stick around, when we're doing software for large company and companies building their business on top of the software that you're creating, one of the things you have to understand is the longer you stick around, those decisions that you make are going to have outcomes.
Absolutely.
And you want to be nice to your future self, nice to your teammates, present and future. So having these things architected in such a way that they can be re-architected later, refactored easier later, that is a huge piece of what we're trying to do. Software's maintainability for not just this week or this feature or this sprint, but for day 2, for the long haul.
Absolutely. And I think that brings us back to what I just said. It's not so much about writing the if statements and the while loops, right? So that what you just said is a skill on its own.
Yep.
Right? And very important.
All right. I know you mentioned this earlier, but I want to talk about it. You have a whole platform. Instead of just like putting some courses out there, you guys built a whole platform.
Yeah.
And I saw this announcement. I don't know when this was, maybe a couple months ago. But talk to me about this. Like, you guys built a whole platform for this.
Yeah. So myself, I'm mainly like back end. Front end is not really my strength. Before we were using Teachable, and for me, it just got to a point where I'm like, how do I provide a better user experience for developers? It's not so much about you come into the platform, I sell a course, and off you go. How can I be the next? I don't know. I'm not going to say Udemy, because Udemy is a marketplace.
Yeah.
But how can I be a one-stop shop for software developers? And that's when the idea came together. We've done a massive rebranding, the logo change and the colors. And then with Teachable, the user experience is not that great. So we want to improve basically everything. And that's when we decided to revamp pretty much everything about the platform. So at the moment, we only have the website, and we officially launched the pre-launch offer that we have on the website, which I'm not going to give the actual date, because obviously I want to keep some suspense in there. But if you look at that video there, so that's basically the new platform, the new dashboard. That's what it looks like.
Nice.
Fantastic.
Looks good. And then I see you have a bunch of like free content on here too. So it's not just paid content, right?
No,
there's our buddy Josh.
Yeah, Josh is there. Yeah. So as part of the platform, so one of the things is we always try and let me put it this way. So before, when I learned all of this stuff, I was like, oh crap, I now understand, what it takes. I understand programming. I wanna make everything for free. Like education should be free, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then obviously, I came to realize that people don't value when you give stuff for free.
This is real.
Like people literally don't value. You can have the best teaching everything. People can go off and secure jobs, and people don't value when it's something for free. People don't value. And for me, it was more a decision of, okay, so I want to try and make a little bit more of extra income aside from my current day-to-day job. And then I realized, actually people actually pay for the stuff that you do. People generally, they want to support your vision, right? So if your stuff is good, you pay, right?
Yep.
But yeah, so we have a mixture of free and paid content. And for example, that course in there, what we're doing also is as part of the new platform. So we've been getting a lot of people saying, "Oh, we can't really afford your courses because they're expensive." I really thought about it, and what we're doing is we're going to switch to a subscription model. So now everyone will be able to afford the courses.
That's great.
On a monthly basis.
Yep. Yeah, it's really important. Like you said, if you don't have stake in the game, I still have courses on there, but I did teach on Udemy at one point, and like you could get these courses for a few dollars or $10 or whatever, and I found that people weren't finishing the courses. A lot of people were buying them, but nobody was finishing them.
Yeah.
Because I have there's no stake in the game. Like $10 is a lot of money to some people. I get that, but $10 to some people is not a lot of money. So if they just spent $10, they're like, I watched a couple videos, I got what I needed out of it, I'm not going to finish it.
Yeah.
But if I'm paying $300 and I'm interacting with Nelson all the time, and there's support for it, now there's like a stake in the game. I have something to lose, right? So I'm probably going to take it much more serious. So yeah, I like that. So cool. What so you're mainly working on this now, right? The platform, the next the version 2.0 that's coming out soon.
Yes.
I don't know the answer to that. I'm just guessing.
Exactly. That's yeah. So few other things also. If you go on the website, on the main website, there's a tool that we launched together with the team in Morocco. It's called Portfolio. So if you go under products, and then Portfolio. So that's a tool that we recently launched as well, which I encourage you to go and test it.
Nice.
It's a tool that allows you to build your portfolio in a matter of clicks, basically.
Ooh, nice.
And then that's one of them. So I've acquired this tool, and the other one, which I've been working for, I'll say almost 2 years, and that's because of time mainly.
Yeah.
It's an app called iMasjid, and this is for mosques around the world. So it's not on the website.
Okay.
It's mainly part of a charity. So I was like, how can I use software programming to create a charity? And it's not so much about myself. It's about giving to the ones in need.
Fantastic.
So we built this tool that allows people to see prayer timetable when they walk into the mosques around the world. We have a mobile app also that we're launching. So they're very, and by the way, the tech stack on those is like JavaScript, Firebase.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing that worked, and I'm not really prepared to change the tech stack on that.
Right.
One. It works.
Right.
But it's just different things that people don't see, but I'm actually, building products as well.
That's awesome.
One of the things that I encourage people to do, a lot is build something. How much have you learned going through the process of building your own platform?
Yeah.
A lot. A lot.
Right? Like, and it doesn't matter large or small. Maybe you're not building a platform for
Right.
hundreds of thousands of developers, but building something, understanding it deeply is an important big step. Whether it's a menu planner or finding out what's for dinner or whatever,
Absolutely.
something that matters to you is going to be more
Yep.
valuable, easier to stay focused on. Something that you can finish, right?
Mm-hmm.
Versus going through somebody else's demos on some project that was significant to them. Finding your path is an important part.
Absolutely.
We
Yeah.
definitely have to continue learning.
I always tell my students, so don't just copy whatever you see.
Mm.
Think of an idea, and then design the database, and you learn from that process. How many of us said, "Oh, I know SQL." Like I said, I knew SQL,
So let's
insert,
start from.
delete. But then once I started using all the window functions and designing database, I'm like, wow, SQL is actually quite big. There's a dedicated role just
Yeah.
for it.
Yep.
Failure is life's greatest teacher.
Absolutely.
Go build something, fail, learn from it, iterate.
Yeah.
There's a question here. Oh, wait, not that one. About like, here it is. What do you think the future of software development is regarding artificial intelligence? Like, glimpse into the future. What do you think? What do you think is going to happen?
To be honest, 2 years ago, I think I had a different answer. I was saying, oh, don't be scared. Obviously, like ChatGPT and all of these tools, they help you to become more productive, which is still the case, right? So, stuff that would take you, I don't know, 10 hours, now you could do it in, I don't know, maybe 1 or 2 hours, maybe.
Mhm.
But it's difficult because things are moving very, very fast.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say something where it will have an impact on you later down the line, right? So for you as an engineer, I would say just learn your stuff. Just be prepared. If AI is a thing in the future, then go and learn maybe AI,
Yep.
right? Know your stuff.
Learn how to leverage it.
Be adaptable.
Yeah, exactly. When the time comes, you're ready.
Yeah.
And then this is a question that got asked at the beginning of the stream. And once again, is there a way to host the LLM on a different server and connect our application to the LLM in Spring? That's a great question. And the answer is yes.
Mm-hmm.
Using Spring AI, you have all of those adapters. It's as simple as a property that's adjusted to target the server that you're trying to hit. There are defaults that will assume it's on localhost, but you can change that host name and that port to some other server on a different machine.
Yeah. So if you want to install like something like Llama and use like Meta's latest models like Llama 3.2, you can run that on a server, change that port number, change that host
Easy
number,
peasy.
and point to it. So yeah.
So I've got Raspberry
Cool.
Pis right over there running multiple models. It's easy.
Everything is possible with Spring.
Yes.
That's true. Well, Nelson, we want to thank you for taking your time out of your day, coming on the show, chatting with us. It was a lot of fun. For those out there who want to stay connected with you, where can they learn more about you? Where can they find you? If you want to be found.
LinkedIn, yeah, you can connect on LinkedIn,
All right.
YouTube, yeah, email if you prefer. Discord, actually, Discord is a good one.
All right.
Discord community, we're always there. So yeah,
Cool.
Fantastic.
And
Thank
be
you so
sure
much.
be sure to check out amigoscode.com as well, the platform we were talking about earlier. So again, Nelson, thank you for taking your time. It was wonderful catching up with you, and hopefully we can do it again soon.
yeah. I just want to say, thanks for having me. It's been an amazing experience. I haven't done this before. This is my first time, and you guys are, lovely people, and yeah, looking for more.
Appreciate it. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.
Take care.
Bye bye. See you.